Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I am in Lisbon, where it is 5:15 in the afternoon. Miles is in the US, and I'm going to guess it's 11:15.
Yes. Yes. Spot
It
on.
wasn't a complete guess. I mean, it wasn't like I went, 20 to 2 in the afternoon or something. I mean, I'm trying to do maths. I'm trying to do what I am on minus 6.
And you have an
But
idea about where I am in the world, so it works
I
out.
mean, Atlanta, right? I think I've got that down now.
I have moved to New
Georgia.
Orleans. New Orleans,
Oh,
actually. So it's only 1 hour difference, but it's not that big of a deal.
all right. I'll tell you what is a big deal, Miles, and that is the news that's dropped. I'm sure many people are here to tune in to look back on yesterday's US Open play, and we'll be doing that very shortly. But the first thing I think we should talk about is the news that has just broken, which is that the WTA finals has been announced. Not a year in advance. We're not talking about WTA Finals 2024. We're talking about WTA Finals 2023 in a couple of months, but a bit less than a couple of months from now, actually, sort of 6, 7 weeks from
7 or so weeks, yeah.
Yeah. Give me some thoughts on this.
Um, the overwhelming feeling is that it's unfortunate that it feels like it's been rushed and disorganized again. That's the overwhelming negative feeling. Positive feeling is that they finally have somewhere to actually put this prestigious event. But it does make you question how much of a priority this prestigious event is if for the second, possibly third year in a row, it's been rolled out well after all the Grand Slams have been underway and just not efficient for what a global leading sports organization, as they call themselves, the WTA, a leading sport organization for women across the world. It doesn't really kind of go hand in hand with what their message is. So but
Agree.
happy to see the tennis. Happy to see the announcement. I think Cancun. I mean, when you hear the word when you hear about the place Cancun, Mexico, I mean, you get good vibes. So hopefully that translates to the tennis, and we get a better showing than we did last year at Fort Worth, Texas.
Yeah, but Fort Worth, of course, had one or two, organizational, not their fault. The WTA again was short notice, and that explained why some of the exposure there was limited. I mean, I agree with Tumaini here with this tweet about the players deserve more, absolutely, but everybody deserves more. Everybody, the
Fans,
fans
yeah,
deserve
everybody.
more. The organizers, the journalists. I think tennis organization from top to bottom needs at the very least a spring clean, but probably more a complete removal and change of house. Because go on anyway, Miles. I'm sure you got a lot to say. What I've just said.
Well, a couple of people have already reached out and said like Cancun sounds fun, vacation, sun, which is great. I mean, who ultimately doesn't? Who would want to pass up the opportunity to go to Cancun? But then my rebuttal, and not trying to be a negative Nancy, but who in this economy with a lot of people kind of being off the heels of a pandemic and just in general the way things are going in the world, who can up and go to Cancun? Well, how many people can actually up and go to Cancun in 7 weeks' notice to support something that is near and dear to them, even if it is on a whim and just because you have the time? 7 weeks is a tight time frame to find flights and accommodations and all of those things. So it's just not. It's not great. Not great.
It becomes a vicious circle as well, Miles, because the coverage now will be limited as well. Because, can you imagine a journalist going to his editor who was 50-50 on sending him somewhere anyway, even if he's
Mm-hmm.
not far or she's not far away from Cancun, maybe somewhere in Texas or somewhere like that. But still, you're going to your editor and it's like 6 weeks away. No, mate, you need to book this a year in advance.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think Cancun is a cheap place to kind of exist. I mean, it's Mexico and they have different like methods of money and all that stuff. But yeah, it just begs the question, what is going on in leadership? Because if you cannot prioritize your flagship event where you're not competing with the ATP Tour, you're not competing with the ITF, this is a WTA Square event, you're handing out millions in prize money, and you're waiting until 7 weeks to even announce where the event is going to be, it makes you wonder. So it makes you wonder, the people that have high ranking in the organization, what exactly are they meeting about? People always joke about like, well, this meeting could have been an email. What are they emailing about? Like, what is actually being discussed at the WTA to where things that feel like huge events are being pushed until the last minute. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and a lot better could be done to everybody.
Absolutely. And a lot has been said and will continue to be said about that. But a little silver lining, I would agree with you. I think the events I've seen in Mexico in recent years have always been well attended. And fingers crossed, they bring the same passion that they have for example, Acapulco, Guadalajara as well. And did they have the WTA finals as well a couple of years ago?
Yeah, Guadalajara in
Guadalajara.
2021. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
exactly. So Guadalajara, the 1000, but also Guadalajara 2 years ago, I think was pretty well attended and a lot of fun. So
I'm
fingers crossed.
interested. Only thing I'll say to end this, I wonder which WTA player that we haven't been keeping an eye on is going to contribute her way into the last 7 or 8 spot into Cancun. Because
Okay, so what are we looking at? Who are the runners and riders? Who are the likelies and unlikelies?
last time I checked, like right outside the top 8, it was Petra Kvitova, Belinda Bencic, and Daria Kasatkina. Based off of her performance at the U.S. Open, I have a feeling that Petra Kvitova probably won't put it in an extra gear or an extra effort to make the WTA finals because she's won them before and she's played a more than her fair share. Belinda Bencic, maybe, but she's had some issues with her body, so maybe her body might actually not give her the opportunity to kind of make that extra push for that spot. So it looks like Daria Kasatkina, in my mind, might make another appearance at the WTA finals, and there might be somebody else that kind of catches fire in the Asian swing that's going back to China, but not ultimately ending in China for the WTA finals. That's a lot of mileage between Asia and Mexico that the WTA players are going to have to compete for prize money and ranking points. So it'll be interesting to
Cool.
follow along, though. That's for sure.
It will be very interesting. Yeah. All right. Listen, let's switch tack and we'll head over to New York. We'll begin by if I can download this quick enough, we'll begin by having a look at Anastasia's take on the day's proceedings, and then Miles and I will share our thoughts as well. Okay. I'll bring us both front stage. It says 2 minutes to download. She's only just uploaded it, bless her. But we
Oh, okay.
will play it. I promise, Miles. Listen, let's get a broader perspective on the tournament, and then we'll go into the details. Good tournament or a little bit underwhelming so far? And you can probably tell what I'm thinking, Miles, from the way I framed the question.
For the U.S. Open, you mean?
Yeah.
I don't think, and I think somebody else. I think Eric, I believe, on Twitter. I can't remember his handle, but I think his name is Eric with a K. He said that it was a little underwhelming, and I can see that perspective from the competition angle. Like, especially if you are just joining us in the second week, the quarterfinal matches. I think between the winners on the men's and women's single side, only one person dropped a set. And that was Ben Shelton losing a set to Francis Tiafoe. That was the highlight of the second week so far. But I think the storylines and headlines going into this final weekend are nice because out of the 4 remaining women and 4 remaining men, all of them have a lot to gain from lifting that trophy. So I'm about as excited as I ever have been going into a US Open final, especially a US Open final that doesn't involve Rafa or Serena's 2 of my personal favorites. So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens and who lifts the trophy because it's history and popularity and a whole bunch of things on the line for everybody that wins. But I do see the angle that there haven't been any breakout stars like in 2021 with Emma Raducanu and Leylah Fernandez, and there hasn't been any must watch matches or replays of matches like in 2022 with Carlos Alcaraz, Francis Tiafoe, Casper Ruud. Even there haven't been those moments. So I get both sides of it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it can be. I'm still very excited by the 4 women semi-finalists and the men's too. But there's 4 very interesting stories. So I completely agree with you, Miles. Although Eric, and if it's who I think it is, I think it's a Swedish guy.
Yes,
I
yes.
would probably go more with him in terms of looking back. Even I was thinking of the last 2, and then suddenly I thought about 2020, and I thought, okay, the men's final wasn't the highest caliber, but it was dramatic. And the women's semi-finals in 2020 were sensational. Now, they
Yeah.
come in the last couple of days, and that's often how we remember tournaments. So this yet might deliver in 2023. But as you highlighted, the narratives in 2021 with Djokovic going for the calendar slam. I nearly said Alcaraz there. Maybe that's to come in the future. And of course, Emma Raducanu, Leylah Fernandez. Every single Leylah Fernandez was a must watch. And then last year as well, so many dramatic matches. Even in the first week, Kai Kanepi having match points against Aryna Sabalenka is a random.
I was there for that match. I was there for that one. Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I'd bring that one up there because there's so many others that I could easily bring up, but I thought I'll just go random in a first week match. And I think was it Shapo and Rublev had a good 5-setter. Again, I'm trying to go a bit niche here, just so everybody knows about the final and
Yeah.
men's and everyone knows about Sinner and Alcaraz. But there were just so many of those matches last year.
But even Felix making his first and only Grand Slam semifinal was in 2021. That run. Yeah, that run. Sakari making a U.S. Open semifinal in 2021 as well, and not being able to keep. It does, and not being able to keep her skirt up because she was fidgeting with that the entire tournament, and Raducanu took advantage. 2022, obviously, the Francis Tiafoe story. Even the Cilic match that he played against Carlos Alcaraz. Yeah, there were definitely matches and stories, and I can't think of anything outside of the drama of Zverev and Sinner so far this year. I think Taylor Townsend beating Haddad Maia, from what I've heard from Anastasia, was very nice from the grounds, but I can't think of any match that just kind of had everybody a buzz outside of Tiafoe and Shelton. But even that, I streamed it live on a platform called Playback, and there were definitely some great points, but it kind of ended with a whimper in a way, because Tiafoe he didn't start well. He played better in the middle, but in the end, he kind of fizzled out, and Shelton was there to take advantage of it. So there haven't been any matches that I kind of am running to YouTube to watch in fulfillment. I will say that.
All right. Good news is we can now hone in on day 10, and we'll begin with Anastasia's take on proceedings.
Open was the start of a heat wave we'll be getting here over the next few days, and it was hot. The juniors are now the outside courts, and I started with Darwin Blanche playing his first round match against Charlie Camus. Both players are left-handed. US Open was the start of a heat wave we'll be getting here over the next few days, and it was hot. The juniors are now playing.
I promise I'll get day 10. It dropped like 30 seconds ago. I'm still trying to get it. We'll get it at midway section. Listen, let's hone in on day 10, Miles. I know Ghosty's very excited about Anastasia's video, and it will come at some point in this episode. Let's just make it random, shall we? Let's hone in day 10. Let's start with the men, if that's okay with you. And let's go with Alcaraz. Any surprises in how that panned out? Hey, Miles, you're on mute. I think you've got to unmute yourself.
You guys can't even use my zinger now because I was on mute. I was surprised how much that Alcaraz did not sweat in that match, literally and figuratively. I didn't think that he was going to lose that before the match, during the match, or at any point, because Zverev has shown that he doesn't have in totality all that it takes to hang with Alcaraz, unless he's kind of playing that form that saw him get to the semis at the French Open. But he's been fairly far away from that in 2023. But he made it look easy. He's actually made most of his US Open defense and second time around at the place that made him famous. He's made it look kind of easy. One set drop to Dan Evans. But other than that, it's been pretty routine, and everything looked pretty simple for him. I am keeping an eye on, it looks like he has a light layer of strapping or tape on both of his thighs, I believe.
Okay.
If not one, I think I've looked at some Instagram pictures, which I can't remember the name of this photographer who takes amazing pictures, and she has a really beautiful water tag or whatever you call that is your signature. But I think I saw some strapping on both thighs. Not anything that's Caroline Garcia level.
the lady who took the amazing Rafa and Roger picture last year? No,
What's her name?
Ella Ling.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I have to look it up. But from what I saw from the pictures, it looked like light strapping. Nothing Caroline Garcia 2022 ish, where it was like really thick or Alizé Cornet strapping. But yeah, I agree with Matthew. I wouldn't worry about the strapping too much because I mean he was covering the court like a gazelle, like he normally does. So
I mean,
I'd be okay.
interesting comments from Medvedev actually came out in his press conference last night, referencing Alcaraz. So it's very much related to this, and he just said, "Look, 97%, and maybe he's even being a bit flattering there, cannot hit through me." And he said it in a really modest way. He wasn't boasting. It was just like, this is kind of how it is. Carlos Alcaraz can. I mean, it's another element. We all know about the serve and volley that Medvedev is vulnerable to when he plays Carlos in particular. But that's another thing with just the speed, and he showed it again last night. I mean, there was also a funny comment from Owen Lewis on Twitter where he said Alcaraz mishits the return because he's diving the wrong way for initially on the serve, so he's having to quickly change direction. And yet he's kind of set up a backhand winner as a result. It's an incredible backhand where there's a lot of work to be done, but only Carlos Alcaraz has to be the hashtag with that.
The famous Carlos Alcaraz.
And also something else that I was watching yesterday, and I thought that's kind of this year I'm seeing it more with Carlos, and that is this incredible attack, particularly on the backhand side. On a serve, I'm now seeing him sort of jumping in the air about 1 meter, 1.5 meters inside the service line, and I don't remember that happening quite so often last year, but it was happening so often yesterday on the Zverev second serve. And yeah, I guess Sasha was always going to be vulnerable to that on the second serve,
especially with all of the physical limitations he kind of came into the match with on the heels at that Yannick Center. And I think I specifically remember he was getting like a groin rub down or something. That was a pause in between the second and third set for him to kind of get some attention. But yeah, he never looked like he had much skin in the game. And I think he maybe felt like it because his parting words to Carlos Alcaraz at the net were, "Go win it." So
yeah,
you know.
So he also
maybe there might be strategic behind that though, because sometimes you kind of jinx your opponent. So maybe he meant to jinx him. Who knows?
Maybe he doesn't like him. But actually, I think they have a pretty good relationship. I know they played golf recently, and they were tips on how to beat Daniil Medvedev, and at the time Sasha Julie did. Talking of which, Daniil Medvedev is next up for Carlos because he had his routine. I know they have met a couple of times where Rublev has won, but by and large, Daniil Medvedev does dominate Rublev, and Rublev rolls over and has his belly tickled by Daniil. And they go back a long way as well, but I don't know how things were for them when they were kids. But yesterday, once again, Daniil Medvedev dominated Andrei Rublev.
It was a very strange match that provided most of my white noise while I did other things in the background, because every time I looked in, there was not anywhere near enough variation in the point construction, which I think is a testament to why that matchup is so awkward for Rublev, because he's playing a more, I'm trying to think of a word to describe Medvedev, because they're similar but also very different. They both are allergic to the net in some ways, and that's not my favorite kind of tennis to watch. But Rublev struggled, and I think both of them, not even think, I know both of them struggled in the conditions. I mean, at one point, Medvedev had his shoes off, his shirt off. I don't think he would have been able to take his shorts off because that would have been against some kind of ATP rule. But
oh yeah, for sure.
It was
One
hot.
Thing I do remember,
it was hot
he had
and muggy.
the towel over his head. That was very funny.
Yeah, he looked miserable. Both of them looked miserable. And for a 3-set match, literally, that none of the scores went even to 5-all, that was an indication that it was some tough conditions. I think even Medvedev on the court after he won the interview, he immediately was like, yeah, I can't think of anything worse. Maybe Tokyo in 2020, the Olympics. That was pretty sticky and not pleasant for a lot of people. But Rublev, I've seen Rublev everybody has seen Rublev be upset after match point, but that particular match point, I think it kind of like it was tattooed in his head or on his forehead that he's now 0-9 in major quarterfinals.
That's right.
So that can't be a good feeling. So
yeah. And there was the other sort of unusual element was he was kind of up in each set a
Yes.
break.
Yeah.
So it's there with that example, it's kind of odd because, when we talk about matchup issues or ability differences or even maybe the occasion to some extent, you don't normally go up a break. When we see, Ghosty here just saying 0-9 for quarterfinals. When we see something like a Taylor Fritz Djokovic situation, or perhaps even let's make it even starker, Monfils Djokovic, or who's it? Nadal beats every time.
Gasquet.
Gasquet. Yeah, I mean, you don't see Gasquet going a break up in each set. It's fairly, he might get a break somewhere along the line, but he doesn't have those kind of opportunities because they're just to be there, really. I mean, anyway, poor Andre. I think this is a good time as we gravitate towards the women to have a look at Anastasia's presentation of yesterday's play. Optimistic this time it will work, and I just have to click present, and I have to go video file, and I have to choose day 10 and not day 8. Here we go.
Of the US Open or day 2 of the heat wave. It's impossible to talk about day 10 without discussing the heat. The high today was 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 38 degrees Celsius. Sitting comfortably as an audience member is barely possible. I'm not sure how tennis was being played. Started on Ash with Aryna and Qinwen. Sabalenka was firing on all cylinders and was too much for Qinwen, who was not having a good serving day. And when facing a player who can return her power, it was not much of a contest. The roof was half closed on Ash, but all that did was trap in the humidity and create a sweatbox. I took breaks in the hallways, which were much cooler, and also on Louis Armstrong, which was featuring doubles. Then it was back to the sweatbox for a match between Andrei Rublev and Daniil Medvedev. This was the worst match I've watched this tournament due to the conditions. The first set, won by Daniil, looked tedious, and I needed a break in between, so it was back to Louis Armstrong for some doubles. I returned to Ash to what seemed like a death march. Andre kept collapsing into his serve and just looked cooked. Daniil had to use his inhaler twice. A fan fainted in the stands, and I was just glad when it was all over. I tried to find the joy in tennis again by watching Takito Oda in wheelchair doubles, but quickly called it a day after the first set tiebreak. TBD if I come back tomorrow, which will be day 3 of the heat wave.
Well. I love some of that commentary. And look what's going on here. Who's this imposter? Somebody coming in and taking our space. What's going on here, Nick? How you doing?
I'm sorry, I've logged into the wrong thing.
It's
Nick.
supposed to be on
Didn't think you'd see
BBC.
me here.
How you doing, Nick?
Oh, I'm doing good, thanks. I've literally just finished work, but I couldn't resist the opportunity to talk about tennis.
Cool.
Nick, you didn't get the backwards hat and blue shirt memo, did you?
Yes, I didn't expect him to be here, so he didn't get the memo. Yeah, blue. That's a good one. Miles. Yeah.
I mean, this is very dark blue.
Okay.
The hat, I probably have a hat somewhere.
I
We'll
don't
let it
know.
slide today.
Do you, Nick? I can't see you with a baseball
Yeah,
cap. I don't
I've
know.
never seen you with the hat. I don't think.
I haven't worn a baseball cap since I was a teenager.
So like
Bobble hat.
last
I can
week.
see you in
Got it.
a bobble hat. You know what a bobble hat is, Miles?
Yes.
A bubble
The
hat?
a bobble hat is that little the sort of winter hat that you have, but with a bobbly thing on top.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Do you get them in New Orleans? I don't know.
No, it never really gets that. We can wear like we call them like beanies or scullies sometimes,
Got
but
it.
you know, just depends.
Yeah. All right. I don't think our viewers are here to hear about beanies and bobble hats. I don't think. I do think that they're here. I mean, you never know, Nick. Yeah. Sometimes we talk tennis and we hemorrhage viewers and we talk about bobble hats and ABBA songs and people start tuning in. So who knows? We are going to transition though back to the tennis. I will begin with you, Miles, though. Give me your thoughts initially on Sabalenka's straight sets win over Qinwen Zheng.
Impressive, dominating. I was a tad bit worried that maybe some of the semifinal demons or issues she's had may come through in the quarterfinal, because she was not only dealing with an opponent who's looked pretty good, but also playing her second match as like the number one to be. So I thought maybe that might creep up in her mind, especially given the fact that her serve has had moments of being shaky. And I was listening to something today that said basically like the yips in your serve never fully go away. It's always something you're thinking about. So yeah, but impressive and very impressive. She looked absolutely at peace with everything and finding fun in the moments of the potential pressure that she's going to have come her way if she leaves New York with the trophy and the number one ranking. She was talking to the ESPN team directly after the match, and was probably one of my favorite interviews and kind of moments from her this season. So impressive, and looking forward to how she plays tonight in the semifinal.
It's a fifth consecutive Grand Slam semi-final as well. There's very many angles you can put on Aryna Sabalenka, and they're pretty much all positive. But it's a fifth consecutive semi-final as well, bearing in mind that she was in New York. Set a breakup as well in the third. I'm sure you remember that, Nick, against Iga this time last year. One thing, over to you, Nick. One thing I would say in addition to what Miles said is I said it to Caitlin Thompson at the day, 2 days after she won in Australia. By the way, when I say won in Australia, I mean Aryna Sabalenka. Caitlin Thompson didn't win the Australian Open. Not to the best of my knowledge, anyway. Maybe there's a parallel universe out there with Caitlin Thompson and the Australian Open. But
with her backhand,
yeah,
she could do it.
yeah, well, apparently she's a handy tennis player. But listen, I said that I felt, and Nick will get this reference, I think, I felt a sort of, rather than someone like Dominic Thiem, who probably got over the line and just went, you know what, this is great. And I'm sure many tennis players feel like that. And then just, enjoy the rest of their careers, or at least the next few months. I saw it as being the most dangerous version of a. Now we've got someone who's going to still be super motivated, and yet probably a little bit calmer in the most important moments. We have still seen a couple of wobbles, but 5 Grand Slam semifinals in a row, Nick, is very, very impressive.
Aryna Sabalenka is officially a top player, and 5 Grand Slam semifinals in a row. This is the kind of consistency that we were seeing sort of 10, 20 years ago from players like Serena Williams, Justina Henin, maybe even like 10 years ago with Azarenka and Sharapova. It's just super impressive. I agree with you on your assessment that it looks very assured with her status as such. I don't think world number one is going to be that much of a burden on her. I think that the problems that she's had in those most recent 2 semifinals were match specific, not mentality specific, and to do with how the opponents were dealing with everything on the day. I think Sabalenka. I think I put this in a tweet. I basically said that Sabalenka can only get brought down by someone playing an incredible level of tennis. I'm not super convinced Madison Keys is going to be able to do that. I love Madison Keys, but I love Madison Keys. I would be over the moon if she did well and she did it. But I don't see that as being as likely as maybe Goff or Mukova doing it in the final. And even then, it's going to be an almighty battle if it happens. Aryna's only been taken down in 3 sets. She is right now the best in the world.
Fair enough. I think so. I don't know if sometimes I have more baggage than the players do, or if they have more baggage, but I've watched a lot of Sabalenka matches, and I always reserve the ability for things to just go off the rails. And I think she's distanced herself from such dramatic showings of that, but it's still possible. And I think Madison Keys probably won't do it, but somebody like Coco Gauff or Muhova that just did it at the French Open may kind of pull it out of her. But she seems very assured of herself and has able to kind of right the ship as much as she's able to, or as many times and as many Grand Slam matches that she's won this year. She's kind of righted the ship. But I think it'll be interesting to see what happens if she's in a position of like really dominating or leading that semifinal tonight. We'll see what happens. Madison Keys isn't the person I think of when in terms of like really digging out match points or coming down from a break. I don't really think of that because it takes a certain level of consistency to put the ball back in play, and that's not necessarily her strong suit all the way. But we'll see. I'm interested in the big babe tennis of it all, and whoever comes out on top of that, I think, will be a good watch in the final. When was the last time a WTA player reached all the semis and slams in the same year? 2016, Serena.
Yeah, that was obvious. That was like Serena. Yeah, she was the last player with that kind of level of consistency. Yeah, I agree with you. I can't think of the last time I've seen a Sabalenka major self-destruction. I'm going to say it's been over a year, to be honest.
That Roland Garros semi was, I'd put it in the folder of a break. I mean, Muhova definitely played her way into that, but I think at one point Sabalenka lost like 20 of like maybe 25 points or something like that in that third set. So I would put that one in a kind of a meltdown. Not a major one because we've seen worse, but she definitely lost the plot. So there's room there for something to happen.
Maybe I'm still giving Muhova credit for that one, to be honest. More credit than Sabalenka melting down. Maybe I think Muhova handled the conditions, particularly in the final set, better than Sabalenka did. So I think, I don't know. I don't remember that match very well, to be honest.
I called it here on Talking Tennis with our dearly departed friend Jakob, and I enjoyed that match from beginning to end. And both of us were quite shocked at how Sabalenka kind of lost the plot. So that's why that match sticks out in my head so much, because I was going to be really impressed that Sabalenka got to a Roland Garros final and she was almost there and didn't happen. So I'm interested to see what happens if she gets to the precipice of another Grand Slam final and it's not Magda Linette across the net. So much respect to Magda Linette, but even she jokes at her form. I think somebody said, I think there was a U.S. Open tweet that was like, what are they looking at, or what are they trying to find behind some binoculars? And she said, my form from January. So at least she's having a joke from it.
I'd like to point out the difference maybe with this Keys semi-final is Keys plays very differently to Jabeur and Muhova. Muhova and Jabeur are master disruptors. And I think that might help Sabalenka, and the Keys is going to be a little more predictable in what she throws at her. Whereas, Muhova is famed for her variety, Ons even more so. And when they absolutely bring it, they can definitely frustrate Sabalenka. Whereas I think Keys is going to try and play Sabalenka at her own game. I think that if Sabalenka does self-destruct, it would have to be on a bigger scale. Otherwise, I'm still backing her to do it. Either that or Keys plays the match of her life. Which
she looked really good in taking out Pegula and followed that up with a really impressive performance over Vondrousova. And I don't know, maybe they both self-destruct at the same time, and it's about who keeps it all together for a Grand Slam final. I think there's a lot on the line for Madison Keys, but she may be playing a little bit freer because she made a comment in press that she's so happy that no one's talking about her anymore, like going into slams. There are people talking about Coco Gauff and Pegula and all those things. So maybe she, on one side of her brain, feels like I have nothing to lose. I'm playing the current / future world number one. But on the other side, maybe this is more me thinking about it than she is. But I do think it's possible that she thinks, how many more U.S. Open semifinals am I going to get to? So I need to use this opportunity to the best of my advantage. And sometimes when you're thinking about that, it can kind of tighten you up. And a tight Madison Keys does not play well. So.
Nick,
Nor does a tight Sabalenka.
just having a quick look at Sabalenka's run. It's without dropping a set, but maybe not the most difficult run to a Grand Slam semi-final and maybe even a final as well. Nick, is that being harsh?
I've seen tougher draws. I've also seen easier draws. I think Australia was easier.
Okay.
Looked at
Vekic quarterfinal. Yeah, Linette.
Vekic, Linette, yeah.
Did she beat
But
Bencic on the way as well?
I could have sworn she did.
remember.
Yeah, she did. I could have sworn she did. She beat Bencic. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think Kasatkina could have been a tough opponent, but Sabalenka had a great day and did what she needed to do. And Zheng could have been the chaos factor, but Sabalenka dealt with it pretty well. So I'm going to say that, yeah, did she have as tough a draw as Coco Gauff? Or no, but I think that there are still some really Kasatkina and Zheng were still potential banana skins, and she navigated them with aplomb. The first 3 rounds in a Grand Slam for a top player don't usually count.
I mean, is it Jody Burrage?
Yeah. Jody.
You're just erasing her from the map, and she took 3 games off of Sabalenka there. So hey,
yeah.
Nerlan, I have a thing that will address your point. For me, melons, wonderful fruit, love them. Watermelons can go away. There's an English expression that I won't use right now, and I'll tell you why. It's the goddamn pips. They're just there, been put on Earth to annoy us. So for me, it's an easy one. I wouldn't even have bought a watermelon. Watermelons just make me mad. Maybe I don't know. Anyway, they just make me mad. That's it. End of story on the melons. We'll get back to the tennis. There is going to be someone on the other side of the net to Aryna Sabalenka tonight, and of course that is Madison Keys. Miles, what did you make of her straight sets win over Vondrousova last night?
Impressive, heavy forehanding, great serving. I wouldn't even consider it a wobble. More so like a realization that she was cruising in the match when she got to like 4-all or something. I think Vondrousova tried her best to give one last push, but Keys was in control. She has a nice balance now of realizing when to extend a point and having a better option of doing so. And I think Mary Jo Fernandez mentioned this in commentary, that she's purposefully slicing her backhand sometimes when she's pushed out further wide in the court, which I've never seen her do. So I think that's a nice wrinkle in her game. And there was also a conversation being had because the camera panned to Lindsay Davenport, who was in the audience watching. And I believe that Chris Evert was leading this conversation and said that Madison Keys is the kind of the person that needs to listen more and then turn that listening into belief. And I don't think that you would think that Lindsay Davenport, a Hall of Famer, multiple time Grand Slam champion, will kind of get through to her and tell her these are the tactics you need to play, instead of Madison Keys kind of believing that she knows best and how her game can translate to the tour. But it didn't always work that way. But now she's engaged to her coach, a Challenger Tour professional, Bjorn Frantangelo. And I made a comment that pillow talk must really be working, because I think the conversations that they're probably having on the court in practice about tactics and like really, really, really bringing the best out of her game in this time on the WTA Tour is almost just enhanced even more once they leave the court, because you're talking to that same person. So I can't imagine Lindsay Davenport and Madison Keys at any pillow talk, but I can imagine that Madison Keys and Bjorn Frantangelo have plenty of it, because they're engaged and she has a really nice ring on her finger. So all of that to say, I think she's listening to tactics and really implementing them in matches while still doing the things that make her comfortable and make her game so effective. And if she's doing that against Sabalenka, I don't think she'll blow her off the court, because Sabalenka has more than enough of her own firepower, but you can definitely ask the questions of Sabalenka, kind of, can you keep up if I find my highest gear? And I think both of them in high gear is going to be a great match to watch.
Whilst John is talking to himself, I Yeah, I can see that scenario happening. I really like how positive Madison Keys is right now, and actually,
she even cursed on the court. She cursed. I don't think I've ever heard her curse. She said that I think Renee Stubbs asked her about the what do you call the roof and the amount of people talking, and I think she mentioned Bjorn Frantangelo trying to give her coaching, and she said she couldn't hear shit. And I've never heard her even say the word shit on a microphone before. So
maybe that's a sign that she's relaxed.
Yes, exactly.
I think we might need to evaluate Keys' season as being one of her best. She's now reached 2 Grand Slam quarterfinals, now a semi-final. Again, it's the 6th of her career. She's won Eastbourne. It's slowly gotten. She's been quite anonymous through the first part of the year, but the second half, she's kind of drawn some attention to herself and said, "Hey, I'm still here." And I think she's going to be up to 9 in the race, which still a few points behind Jabeur, but puts her into an interesting position when they get to Guadalajara in 2 weeks, which blows my mind that we're going to a 1,000 2 weeks after a major. But that's a discussion for maybe WTA Weekly on Monday. But I think that we have to talk about. I don't know what other seasons. Obviously, 2017 comes to mind when she reached the US Open final. Maybe 2015. But yeah, Keys has this habit of just reminding us of how good she is every now and again, and we go, "Oh yeah, Maddie Keys, the one who we all backed to win a Grand Slam about 10 years ago."
If she wins this US Open, I feel like some people are going to be like, "Yay, finally," and some people are going to be like, "I told you so." Maybe it just took a little bit longer to say that I told you so, but she's always had the kind of caliber of tennis to win a major. I just think sometimes she's gotten tough draws, and sometimes she's just been her own worst enemy and not really had the mentality to just put an extra ball in play.
That US Open 2017 final, she was like a rabbit in the headlights. Really, to be honest, that she didn't handle that situation well. I'm not going to say she definitely would have won because Sloane was doing something really special that tournament. But yeah, that's going to be. But she's gonna have redeemed herself either way. And yeah, John's right. Whichever the 4 remaining ones wins, it's going to
be a great trophy lift. Whoever wins it, whoever lifts it. And I like Madison Keys' dress quite a lot.
John was asking about Vondrousova's injury concerns. I mean, I'm not massively worried. Yes, she had to pull out the doubles, I think, but she played the quarterfinal. She made the second set close-ish. I think she just needs some decent recovery time and she'll be fine. I don't see this as significant. That being said, she does have a history of being injured. Was it?
She has a history of just being inconspicuous. Like, I didn't even know that her getting to a quarterfinal, I'm not saying it would be impossible. I just still don't know where to place her. And the fact that she's actually won Wimbledon and has that title in her back pocket has just made it even more of a scramble in my head of how to place her when I see her name in a draw. So
I would put Vondrousova in the kind of consistent, gets the job done up to a certain point category, a bit like Pegula.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I can think of like 10 or 15 more players that I would say are more consistent than Vondrousova.
I wouldn't have thought that before Wimbledon. I think that now.
Even though Wimbledon,
the hard courts.
Yeah, even though Wimbledon is a massive tournament to win, I still err on the side of one tournament win does not change my perception of you being consistent.
This isn't Wimbledon only. This is Wimbledon plus Montreal and Cincinnati.
If she gives me one more tournament, whether that be a 1,000 or like the Australian Open coming up, and she kind of plays to her seeding, whether she wins it or not, or she needs to go to her seeding, then I'll kind of be squarely on the wagon of Vondrousova being consistent. But we've seen this before where she kind of like gives us a hot streak, and then it kind of goes away. And you're like, oh yeah, she was good. What happened to her? And she's young enough.
Guadalajara then.
Yeah,
she's probably going to be in Cancun. Actually, she'll probably make it. So,
and there's another 1,000. There's actually a WTA mandatory 1,000 in October, Beijing.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah. That's on the calendar again.
So there you go. Yeah. So those 3 tournaments. I mean, like if she gets the semi-finals in Cancun, that would blow most of everyone's minds. I think going back to John's question of was the injury key to her loss? To be honest, in my view, I think it massively held her back. I think it made it harder for her to win, but I think Madison was keys to her loss.
Yeah, Madison held the keys. Yeah.
So we'll get the obvious joke out of the way and move on. So Vondrousova still in the mix, I would say. I think look, she's going to go up to she's solidified her as top 8, I think, to the end of the year, pretty much. We'll see how it goes. What about the other semi-final? I think we've kind of danced around this one. This is the one we're hyped for. This is the one that Miles wants to talk about. So should we talk about Karolina Muchova first?
We can.
I'm not being super serious, but maybe.
That's a player who I actually do feel like has changed my perception of her. Because if I look at her career so far, she's had really impressive highs, not to the point of like actually lifting the trophy. She's come up short a couple different times. Obviously, Roland Garros, Cincinnati a couple weeks ago. I think she only has 1 title in Prague back in 2019, which isn't great for a player that's in the top 10. Has shades of Sakkari, I guess. But when I see her play, I see a complete player in every facet that is going to trouble everyone around her, and has the ability to trouble everyone around her, maybe even when she's not necessarily playing her best. And I think that's the difference between her and Vondrousova. Same flag, different player. I think if she's feeling good and didn't wake up today and said ouch from soreness or whatever, I think she takes what she learned from Coco Gauff, or from the Coco Gauff match in Cincinnati, applies it, and makes that match very athletic, because that's what she does really, really well. I think she mixes the height and trajectory up of the ball, and she does a really, really good job of making things gritty and fun to watch, to me.
The key difference between Muchova and Sakkari is I can't think of any scenario where Muchova's faded or been like a rabbit in the headlights or being completely outplayed when she's physically on. And I think she's had an easier run through this draw than I think I've seen her in recent years. She's only dropped the 1 set. That was to Wang Xinyu. I was a little surprised she dropped that set, to be honest.
Me too.
But the rest of her draw has been pretty impressive, the way she handled it, especially the way she came back against Taylor Townsend, because that was not a good start for her, and she still won the opening set. I think she's. I know how I think the semi-final is going to go, but I'm not super confident in that prediction, and that's because I know that Muchova is just dangerous and won't give up, and I think she is going to come into this fairly fresh. I think she's another player that everyone's kind of going, finally, she's showing us what she's showing us a lot of potential. And I think if she did come through, that might set maybe more alarm bells for Sakkari off, because Muchova's on a winning run against Sabalenka. More alarm bells for Sabalenka, because Muchova's beaten her the last 2 times they've played. In
Cincinnati, and Roland Garros, yeah.
Though that's, that might be a bit of a, oh no, it's you again type vibe.
Sometimes that'll make you alert, though. Sabalenka looks like the kind of competitor that absolutely, like, winning once annoys her, winning twice, or losing once annoys her, losing twice in a row absolutely kind of puts the red alarm on for her to do her absolute best and kind of put the absolute effort out there. And coincidentally, with Coco Gauff, I feel like beating a player like Muchova affirms how good Coco Gauff actually is. She said some things in press that reminds me that we're literally in the mind of a 19-year-old, because she has this interesting juxtaposition of being able to sound really like wise beyond her years, and then a couple minutes later sound like an actual 19-year-old. And she said something about like I know I've tangented a little bit, but we're talking about the semifinal. She said that when she dreamed about tennis, she never even thought about playing in front of crowds. She didn't think about expectations of sponsors and all those things. She only thought about putting her hands on trophies. And I think that gives me a glimpse into how she views herself as a top athlete. Like, yes, she wants to win, but I feel like she is in the middle of realizing that she can, for example, beat Ostapenko love in 2 if Ostapenko, or love in 3 if Ostapenko is not on her game. And knowing that she just beat Muhova in Cincinnati should kind of like level up that process of realizing that, hey, like, yes, I'm Coco Gauff and I'm super athletic, but I also am a really, really good tactical tennis player, and she's enjoying herself out there. So all of that combined, obviously, me not being biased as a fan, I give her the edge. But I think the match is going to be wildly entertaining and hopefully sets the tone for another great women's semifinal at the US Open, hopefully.
This is the match I'm planning on trying to stay awake for. I don't know how successful I'm going to be.
Well,
but...
okay, I have a small plug, if you let me have a small plug. There's a platform and app, iOS and Android, I believe, called Playback, Playback, and I will be streaming live both of the women's semifinals. It's a really cool platform. You're actually able to watch the match in real time and actually see the ESPN coverage. I did it for the first time in Shelton and Tiafoe's match the other day, and it's really, really awesome. So if you're up and alert for that, come over and join me, and it's free. All you
commentating
need
on this one for Talking Tennis?
me.
Yeah, no, we do have a commentary as well. And I think.
Oh, you do. Yeah.
No, don't worry, Miles. No, I'm saying big ups too. You listen, whenever. Yeah, whatever platforms, it's all a big love in here. But yeah, no, we will have it. But I'm just trying to think if it's me and Damien or Damien and someone else. But we have got it too as well. But yeah, of course, Miles. Miles, is that you predicting a Coco Gauff win, by the way?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I feel confident.
I am predicting a Coco Gauff win, but I think there's going to be at least one tiebreak involved. I think it's not going to be an easy win. What I was going to say about, and I think the reason why I'm cautious about it, because Gauff has looked really good, but Muchova has also looked good, and that's why I'm reluctant to kind of securely plant my flag in the ground there. But something I've observed about Gauff during this run through the draw is we've always known that she's had a fighting spirit, and I think that fighting spirit has helped her win matches between the age of 15 to 19, despite holes in her game. Whereas now I'm seeing an element of steel, that element, that sort of look in her eyes of I'm coming for this. The same kind of look that I used to see from Serena, or other great champions of the past. And I think she's coming for this, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Muchova's performance in the quarterfinal, though, was pretty good. It was sensational, actually. I was really pumped by it was 6-love, 6-3, but listen, it was a really close first set. I mean, there was one 20-minute game in there, but the variety with which Muchova can bring is incredible. However, like you two, I am just edging towards a Coco win, possibly in 3 sets as opposed to the straight sets that she had recently in Cincinnati. But hopefully it delivers. And like I say, I think all 4, have a narrative now going into these semifinals. And whoever, as Miles suggested, lifts the trophy on Saturday evening, it's going to be a great story. I guess with Madison Keys and Muchova, there's sort of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years of pursuing this. And I do think with Coco and definitely with Sabalenka, even though she's obviously much older than Coco, their time will come again, and I'm very optimistic now about Coco's chances. Anyway, one day, very soon, and I think Sabalenka will end up being a multiple Grand Slam winner. I guess Madison Keys is the sort of fourth one in this.
Yeah,
Finals. Like,
she is the fourth one.
she's got to get one of these.
Yeah, I feel like if Madison Keys, I'm not going to say it's never going to happen for her again because she's not like 33. I think Madison is 27 or 28, one of the two. So she still has
28.
Yeah, she still has effectively like 3 or 4 more U.S. Opens to play if her body allows her to, and she's healthy and she has the desire. But this does feel like a really great opportunity because there is a world number one that she's literally playing, and in some ways there isn't, because Sabalenka has been consistent, but she doesn't have the same aura, and I think you're going to love this sentence. She doesn't have the same aura of Iga Swiatek. Even though Madison Keys has a hardcore win over Iga Swiatek, I would put Swiatek as a much dominant favorite over Madison Keys if she was in that position playing the semifinal, whereas a Sabalenka and Keys matchup gives me a little bit more hope for Keys. So I think Keys is maybe putting all of that together, like I've said previously, in her head. I do feel like what John was saying earlier, Sabalenka and Coco Gauff, especially Coco Gauff, should definitely reach another U.S. Open semifinal in their careers, probably 2 or 3 more. But with Keys and Mukova, it's way more questionable for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to rank the semi-finalists in order of most to least likely to win, and this is based on purely my head and nothing to do with my heart, 1 Sabalenka, 2 Gauff, 3 Mukova, 4 Keys.
I'd switch Mukova and Keys, but yes.
You think Keys is more likely to win than Mukova?
Only because she's been in the final before, and she's had 3 semifinals here. And I think but she doesn't have 3 semifinals at the U.S. Open.
True.
So I feel like that tells me that she likes the conditions, and it's like there's evidence that she likes the conditions. So I give Mukova at number 4, but not a complete far and away number 4. Mukova, I don't think it's completely far and away. So
let's face it, none of these women would be a surprise champion, really.
Yeah, given the seasons that they've had, given the seasons that they've had, or their overall aura as a player, aka Madison Keys. Madison Keys has not had a bad season, but she hasn't had a splendiferous season. And Coco Gauff has not had, well, she's had in some ways the worst season of her life. Because if we were recording this Talking Tennis episode 5 months ago, we would not be feeling like Coco Gauff is going to be in the semifinals of a major. We would not be feeling that. Even though she made the quarters of the French, going into the French, I didn't see that coming really, or I didn't feel confident in projecting it. And now we're here, and I feel confident putting her in a Grand Slam final. So,
you know what the main deciding factor of this is going to be is the fact that Madison Keys is the only one of these 4 semifinals that wasn't in my power rankings. And judging by previous slams, that means she's probably going to come to either win it or take it to a 3rd set, because that's what's happened the last 2.
I would not be mad at it. I'd encourage it.
But I am with you, Nick. Unusually, I don't know if I feel comfortable right now, but I am with you, Nick, on your order of most likely. I would put Mukova ahead of Keys. Maybe I know that Keys got to the quarters at Wimbledon this year, but it does feel like a while since we've seen a sustained period from her. And by the way, Miles, you say 5 months with Coco Gauff, probably even 2 months. I mean, the first round exit at Wimbledon.
Yeah.
Was a sort of new low, and I know she got to the quarters in Paris, but that was an outlier in what was a disappointing clay court season, I think, for Coco. So it's just incredible what's happened.
It's been an interesting season because she's won 3 titles, Auckland, DC, and Cincinnati. But in between all of that, it's crazy how tennis works, and part of the reason I love it. There's definitely been some head scratching lows and head scratching losses. So very, very interesting season for the teenager.
The Badosa defeat in Madrid was particularly painful to watch. So it's just
has aged poorly because Badosa is where she is right now. So
exactly. All right, cool. We're just about to approach the hour mark. I do think we've pretty much covered everything. We did the men's semifinals before Nick arrived. And if you are just tuning in, go back to the beginning and And check that out, and also get in the comment section below whether you agree or disagree with any of our thoughts on yesterday's action, but also the upcoming action today. Nick, any final thoughts before we put this show to a close?
I think we've covered everything. I'm super excited for all these semi-finals. Like I said, I think there's a story to each one of these players. And yeah, I just hope I can stay awake for at least some of Goff versus Bukova. I'm not going to make it to Sabalenka versus Keys. No disrespect to either player, but there is a certain point.
What time does that put it for you guys? Like, what time does that put it?
The night session starts at midnight.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well, yeah, that's tough.
It then becomes 20 past midnight by the time the first ball is hit. 3 sets.
Yeah, that's tough. How is Australia worse or better?
Australia, the day session starts at midnight. The night session starts at around 8 a.m.
But the whole viewing experience, I think, Miles, is worse for Australia because at least for 9 days of the US Open, we get a good sort of 5 p.m. till midnight, lovely section, if you like, in the first week in particular. So my opinion, I mean, other people, depends on your circumstances, doesn't it? I mean, but Australia is basically, if you do have a sort of 9 to 5, it's kind of weekends only, and you might catch up on the news in the morning, but it's the trickier one of the two slams.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Miles, any final thoughts?
Anyone remember Mara Santangelo?
Nope.
No relation to Bjorn Frantangelo. No one remembers. I think that was her name, Mara Santangelo. I remember her vividly because she was I think she was the first round opponent of Serena Williams in the 2007 Australian Open, and she went on to win that tournament. Only reason I thought about her was because we were talking about Bjorn Frantangelo, who is the fiance of Madison Keys, and maybe because all of that came to me, Madison Keys is the future U.S. Open champion. So,
well, on that bombshell, Nick, do you want to come out with your famous final words?
Are they that famous? I don't know anymore. I think I like your sign off, John. And look, you started the show. You're hosting it. You should finish it.
All right. Miles, big thank you for stopping by today. Same to you as well, Nick. For those of you tuning in, thank you as well for stopping by, and you know the drill. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.